The Mexican government just announced that they had killed the country's most wanted and notorious drug lord. It concerns Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the leader of the infamous Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, a name that appeared in investigations in Mexico, Europe, and the United States. There was even a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head. But now, he lay dead after a military operation in his own stronghold in the state of Jalisco. Within hours of this event, chaos began. Cars went up in flames, but supermarkets and buses were also set on fire. Government buildings were attacked and roadblocks were erected. People in the area stayed and are still staying indoors out of fear. It was as if all of Mexico held its breath for a moment, because this was not just any criminal. This was the man who many saw as the successor to El Chapo, and his death could be the beginning of a new chapter in the Mexican drug war. El Mencho was born in the 1960s in a dusty village called Michoacán in Mexico. His parents worked the land, and young Nemesio left school at an early age to help them. There was no luxury, no opportunities, only the land. And of course, the stories about fast money. As a teenager, he already realized that more money could be made with marijuana than with avocados. At some point, he began guarding plantations and saw how the criminals lived. And there, he made a choice that would change his life. In the 1980s, he left illegally for California, where he used different names to stay under the radar. He became involved in various thefts and drug trafficking. In 1992, he was convicted of heroin trafficking. He then spent years in an American prison, and after his release, he was deported to Mexico. But those years in the United States had changed him. He had learned how international drug trafficking worked and how networks were built. He also learned how money was easily moved. In fact, his time in prison was simply a training ground. And when he was released, he had only one goal in mind: power. Back in Mexico, El Mencho briefly worked as a police officer in Jalisco. That gave him knowledge of tactics, weapons, and different networks. Not long after, he joined the Millennium Cartel, an organization with ties to the well-known Sinaloa cartel. He mainly worked there as a bodyguard for the leaders. He was known as calculating, ruthless, and loyal to no one but himself. When the Millennium Cartel fell apart around 2010, he saw his chance. He gathered a group of loyalists and founded a new cartel, with himself at the top, of course. This was the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, also known as CJNG. Think of convoys of heavily armed men. Propaganda videos in which cartel soldiers march in military uniforms and attack the police and the army. CJNG grew at record speed. Within a few years, the cartel was active in dozens of Mexican states. The cartel smuggled methamphetamine, cocaine, and later fentanyl to the United States, and built various international networks in Europe and Asia. According to experts, CJNG earned billions per year with their criminal organization. But the cartel became especially notorious for its extreme violence: attacks on police stations, assaults on government officials, arson attacks, and blockades. CJNG was not afraid of the state. In fact, they challenged the state. At one point, El Mencho became one of the most wanted criminals in the world. The American DEA offered no less than $15 million for information, and he stood prominently on the list of most wanted fugitives of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. But El Mencho remained untraceable. But how was this possible? Because he hid in the mountains of Jalisco, because he constantly moved between secured ranches, and because he was protected by loyalists and fear. In Mexico, he became a legend, and that was purely based on stories because a cartel leader obviously does not give interviews. Under El Mencho, CJNG became more than a drug cartel. It became a criminal syndicate. According to investigations, the cartel was involved in drug trafficking, extortion of businesses, illegal mining, oil theft, and human smuggling. The cartel also had ties to hundreds of Mexican municipalities. In some regions, they even had more power than the government itself. CJNG had a paramilitary structure with ex-soldiers from Colombia and Guatemala, among others. They used drones, armored vehicles, and heavy weapons. It turned the drug war in Mexico into a real war. His son, Ruben, a commander within CJNG, is currently serving a life sentence in the U.S., and his brother Antonio, also called Scarface, was extradited to the U.S. El Mencho's family was deeply involved in the cartel, but despite everything, he never named a successor. CJNG revolved only around him, and that makes his death extra dangerous. According to the Mexican government, El Mencho was tracked down in Tapalpa, a town in the state of Jalisco, a place that sounds almost idyllic to outsiders. Hills, pine forests, cool mountain air. Not a metropolis where cameras hang everywhere, but an area where you can easily hide, and where local power structures are often older than the state itself. But that is exactly why Jalisco has been seen for years as the heart of CJNG. Not only because the cartel started there, but because the landscape fits perfectly. Vast routes, remote paths, ranches and country houses, and communities where trust is scarce and fear sometimes travels faster than news. And then comes the moment the government this week calls the biggest victory. In the early hours of the day, so it was later reported, a special military unit carried out an operation. The authorities have not yet released all operational details, and that is not strange. In these kinds of actions, information is often fragmented, politically sensitive, and meant to steer both public opinion and the reaction of the opposing side. What was made clear is this: El Mencho was located after a meeting with the mistress. He was wounded during the action and is said to have died shortly afterward, before he was fully taken out of danger. With that, on paper, the hunt for Mexico's most wanted man ended. But in reality, something else began at that same moment. As soon as his death became known, the atmosphere in the country changed rapidly. Not with one big explosion, but with a domino effect. In Mexico, this has become an almost recognizable pattern when a kingpin is taken down. The cartel responds not only with intimidation, but with visible public disruption. Residents in several states reported that vehicles and supermarkets were set on fire, roads were blocked with burning barriers, and important routes and access roads were paralyzed. The goal is rarely to create random chaos. It is about controlling movement, about buying time, about showing we still decide what happens, even if our leader is gone. And that is exactly why the reaction hit so hard, because it was not only about violence, it was about a signal. The state of Jalisco was almost immediately hit by the greatest unrest. The local government urged people to stay indoors. In some areas, even public transport came to a halt. Hotels were also advised to keep guests inside. And then there is Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco, a cultural metropolis, economically important, and extra sensitive because international sporting events are taking place this year. The image of burning vehicles in and around such a city affects both citizens' confidence and the international view of Mexico. It is a reminder of something that has haunted Mexico for decades. When the state strikes a kingpin, the country can temporarily turn into a chessboard, where every move has direct consequences for ordinary people. Notably, the authorities did not immediately release all details. There are several reasons for that. First, operational security. Information can affect ongoing actions or endanger people, but also political timing. These kinds of announcements are also made strategically, and there was an extra dimension: the international relationship with the United States. There were reports that the U.S. helped with intelligence that may have made the operation more effective, but also makes the story politically sensitive, because Mexico wants to be seen as sovereign, while at the same time it cannot deny that cooperation has existed in practice for years, especially with targets of this caliber. If you want to understand a country in moments like these, you have to look at what happens to daily life. When embassies call their citizens to stay indoors, when hotels ask guests not to go outside, when transport is shut down, then that says something beyond incidents. It means everyone is preparing for a scenario in which the situation can escalate quickly. And that is the core of El Mencho's legacy. Not only what he is said to have led, but the climate of fear and uncertainty that surrounded his name. The idea that one event, one message, is enough to cause a chain reaction across multiple states. The death of El Mencho is presented by the government as a victory, and that is understandable. For years, he was the symbol of untouchability. But then, it is no longer about one leader, but about multiple men and factions, each with their own territory, their own troops, their own interests. And in those first days after Tapalpa, Mexico already felt that. When a man like El Mencho falls, it seems as if a chapter is closed. But in the world of organized crime, a new chapter often begins. In Mexico, experts call this the kingpin strategy. The idea that eliminating a leader weakens an organization. Sometimes that is true, but often the opposite happens. Think of a gigantic empire without a captain, regional leaders with their own armies, and routes, ports, and smuggling networks worth billions. Those are interests people fight for. CJNG is not a small group. It is a network that, according to investigations, was active in hundreds of municipalities with international connections from Latin America to Europe. Such an organization does not stop when one man disappears. It changes shape, and that makes the coming months dangerous. El Mencho never clearly named a successor. His son is imprisoned in the United States. His brother has been extradited, and other leaders have their own territories. In such a situation, several scenarios often arise. Internal power struggles between regional commanders, splinter groups forming new cartels, or rivals trying to exploit weakness. We have seen this pattern before in Mexico, for example, after the arrest of other cartel leaders. The organization does not disappear, but splits into smaller, often more aggressive groups. And that usually means more unpredictability. For outsiders, cartel conflicts may seem far away, but for residents of Jalisco and surrounding states, it is reality. In some regions, cartels influence local economies, agriculture, transport, and even politics, and that makes it impossible to limit the consequences of one event to the underworld alone. CJNG also had networks outside Mexico, and that means the consequences can also be felt internationally. Drug trafficking is a global market. When a leader disappears, routes, prices, and power balances change. Authorities in different countries therefore follow this closely, not because one man determines everything, but because his position was a hub in a global network. And that network remains. In Mexico, the same question is now heard everywhere. Who becomes the next leader? But maybe that is not the right question. The real question is, can a system that has grown for decades disappear because of one operation? History suggests not. The Mexican drug war has lasted for decades. governments have tried different strategies, arrests, military operations, and cooperation with other countries. Sometimes that led to temporary calm, but sometimes it also led to new conflicts. The death of El Mencho is now seen as an important victory, but Mexico also knows that the real challenge comes afterward, restoring stability, trust, and security. That is harder than finding one man. El Mencho leaves behind a name that will be spoken for a long time. His cartel influenced economies, communities, and international routes. His name became a symbol of power, fear, and wealth. But in the end, his story ended like that of so many cartel leaders, abruptly in an operation that took years of preparation. El Mencho is dead, but the question hanging over Mexico is bigger than one man. Can a country ever truly escape a war so deeply rooted in its history? Not everyone walks through every door in the crime mansion, but if you are still here, you might belong. Subscribe, and don't miss what's behind the next one.